crazy world out there, people. It's a crazy world with with a lot of crazy people. I wouldn't say that, I guess, insanity is defined as repeating the same thing over and over, expecting different results. You may have heard that before. And in a way, that seems to be kind of what we as humans in general do. We wake up each day and go about our day hoping for something, yearning for something, whatever it may be in our individual lives. But it's difficult sometimes to gauge exactly how we feel about each other and about other people. I find myself scoffing at certain things, just like, I guess the idea that we as humans, I shouldn't say humans, that's not fair, we in the Western society are always trying to fit everything into sound bites, we want to make some people want to make a flashy 5-minute video that tries to condense everything about a subject in, just for the sake of, hey, I can talk about this subject. And sometimes it's a subject that's just so vast that there's just no point. I guess an example would be, I made a video a couple weeks ago about the opioid crisis. And during that few days during that period, I had written and collected about, I'd written myself about 15 pages of a book that I was going to write. Hadn't even barely touched upon the important subjects. And I decided, I'm not going to make a video about, these things until I can really cover all bases. And then just today, just a few minutes ago, I was looking down my subscription list, and it was, I think, a SciShow, and it was, how did we get into this opioid crisis or something? And I thought, I don't even want to watch a fucking 3-minute video try to explain the opioid crisis. And as I figured, of course, pharma wasn't even barely mentioned at the beginning. It all comes back to, if you understand a lot more about a subject, and then you hear a very general blanket, statement about it, or a short synopsis about, a subject that is much more complicated, then it's easy to just roll your eyes and say, it's a waste of my time. It's with so many different subjects. And the more you learn about things and the more you understand, whether you're right or wrong, doesn't matter. Just the more understanding you have about things, the more in-depth you get, the harder it is to have a surface discussion about these things. But at the same time, there are many people who need just the quick, soundbite about something to know if they're interested, or if they're, it's even, maybe they just want to get the very basics, the very, simple story of what's going on in a situation, but there is no simple story sometimes, and it's very much more complicated. So I guess it can be frustrating that people try to oversimplify things that are very complicated, and this is seen in every aspect of society, politics, religion, and elsewhere. Everybody says, well, this is just the way it is. Deal with it. And of course we know things are more complicated than that. And I find myself, I realize that to other people, they have their image of me. Like when I meet people on the street, or let's say I go to pick up my son from school, I'm sure that some people think, oh, look at that guy. Whatever their thoughts may be, it doesn't matter to me. I dress eccentric and I'm kind of a strange dude, but I'm generally friendly, and I'm always open with people and kind, but find myself judging others, not judging in the sense of, ooh, look at that person, but rather in my mind thinking, why am I surrounded by so many idiots? Why do people do such stupid stuff? Why can't people, and this has nothing to do with what we know or how intelligent we are. This has nothing to do with a person's ability to even hold a discussion or to know things. It's a matter of, don't park halfway out in the fucking street in front of a fire hydrant. That kind of stuff. Don't complain to the cashier because you had a bad day and give them all your crap, or take it out on them, or while in there, don't sit and talk on your cell phone while you're at the checkout. These are things that seem to me like very basic respect things that we should do for one another. And people are just fucking oblivious to it. And and it's kind of like the guy who drives too fast. You know, there's always that one guy that's weaving in and out of traffic. And in the past, I remember I told myself, maybe that guy just happens to be hurrying to the hospital. Because you always have to give an example of the extreme, you know. Or maybe this person was just rude to the cashier because they had a horrible morning and their best friend just died or something. We don't know what's going on in a person's head. So we can't assume that another person should feel a certain way or be a certain way. But sometimes you just meet these idiots over and over and over again, and you say, how can a person live this way? You know, how have they even gotten as far as they have? But it's these types of realizations that, you know, by saying that, another person may say, well, how do you know? You know what you're talking about. And I don't, and I'll admit that. But that's the thing. If I make a mistake, or if, you know, somebody looks at me funny for something I do, I say, well, what did I do wrong? Maybe I could have handled that better, rather than just being stubborn and saying, well, tough shit, you know, live with it. Because we all have to live together, you know. As much as we may disagree with our neighbors, you know, our direct next door neighbors, we still get along for the sake of, hey, we're neighbors. We have to be a community here. As much as we may disagree with even anyone, to start, I guess, in our direct immediate family, we still have to cooperate and get along with them. And that moves out to the neighbors, then out to the cities, and then the cities in the state have to get along. The states have to get along somewhat to make a country function. But it seems like that's where people draw the line. Well, we've got our borders now, and the rest of the world can just fuck off. And that's the type of mentality a lot of Americans have had in my lifetime. You know, the idea that, well, they're over there in that other country. And I guess it's the same way as saying that's over there in the other neighborhood. Those are the Bloods, those are the Crips. You know, we divide ourselves among whatever lines we can. So the more complicated our lives are, the more we find a way to work together, because we have to. But whenever our lives are going fine and everyone seems to be doing okay, we seem to get a little cocky and decide that we can do everything ourselves and we don't need anybody's help. It's like for example, the American male who's done well for himself and he's got a great business and everything's going fine, and he develops this attitude of, well, why should we give welfare? Why should we help out the poor? And he gets this image that everyone who's on welfare is sitting on their couch just watching TV, and, you know, sucking off the teat of the system. And then all of a sudden one day he breaks his arm, or, you know, gets his legs chopped off, and all of a sudden he's on disability. All of a sudden he's the one who needs help. And then it becomes okay, you know. We adapt how we feel by what we need, and I think that that's important to remember. We could be in anyone else's shoes at any time. You know, if you scoff at the homeless guy asking for change, just remember you could be there. And a person may say, well, I wouldn't put myself in that situation. I would get out and I would do whatever I had to do to get myself out. That's what you say now, sitting in a comfortable chair. Or perhaps you've already been through that and maybe you really would pull yourself out. The point being that we can't determine what's in another person's mind, or how another person, what may have happened within their life to bring them to where they're, you know, their situation they're at. So the most crucial thing I think that we need to do is recognize that in each other, that everyone is out. Most people are just out trying to do the best they can. Most people are not trying to cheat us. Most people are not trying to lie or fool us. If anything, they're doing so, lying to us so we see them, or view them as a more respectable person. We will lie about, you know, our accomplishments and what we've done, so people look up to us instead of looking down on us. But the most important thing is to be honest about who we really are, and by doing that, we realize that everyone else isn't just happy all the time, or everyone else isn't always frustrated all the time, that people have moods, you know. And I'll just finish up with this one. I was thinking earlier, I was talking with my son, he's 22, and we talk about philosophy and life a lot. I said, we can never know what's in another person's head, you know, and we can never know how another person truly feels. All we can do is just bounce ideas off one another, but we do know that people are more likely to complain than they are to go out and give praise to life. Not always, but if you look at a comment section for a product or reviews for a product, you may find a couple positive reviews. Some of them may be obviously paid reviews. And that's almost what people have to do to get reviews on a lot of products. Because nobody's going to review a curling iron they bought. They got it, it works, great. But if it breaks and doesn't work, they're right there to complain about it. And if we notice this, we can see that people do this all the time. You look in the comment section on YouTube, there's so much garbage. I can, often determine the value of watching a series by the types of comments that are in the comment section. Not always, but, controversial subjects will attract controversy. But you will always see the people who say, oh, fuck this guy, or this guy sucks, or, But as far as praise, it's much more difficult to find that because people are always looking to complain about something. If, for example, I've made a 25-minute video talking about my innermost thoughts on life and whatnot, and the only response a person may have is like, "Oh man, you need to shave" or something. And I know that sometimes, and that doesn't bother me at all. I know that that's just over their head. They're in their own world, but that's what they're focused on. That's the focal point is finding a fault, and that I see that a lot in people around me. That they're always looking for a weakness, a chink in the armor, so they can go in and attack someone and show how they're wrong. And, oh, look, you made a mistake. And the best thing we can do in that case is to say, hey, man, I'm always making mistakes, but I'm learning from them. And the only way to learn from them is to admit that we have them and that we make them. And I'm not just talking about little mistakes or big mistakes, just everything in life. The choice of the way we live for a year or a month or a day or 10 years. It's never too late to change and to give people the same respect we would expect. And it all comes down to that basic rule, treat others as you would want to be treated. And sometimes we haven't been treated well enough, so we assume we should treat others bad. But I can only be in my own head. I can never know what anyone else is thinking, but I can feel out people's attitudes. And I feel sorry for people who are always negative, who haven't learned to transmute that mental negativity into something positive to help them in their life. Because damn, we're faced with a lot of problems in life. There's always something you got to do. You got to work on your house. You've got bills due. You've got, even if you live out in the middle of nowhere, and you don't have to pay taxes, you don't have to worry about society. You're living on your own, and you're worried about the elements, whether it's going to snow too much, how much you can harvest in your crop. We've traded problems for more problems. We've traded the problems of worrying about our crop coming in for the problems of worrying whether we'll get a raise, which is our metaphoric crop harvest, if you will. And then we complain about it. And we talk about, oh, look at how messed up society is. And I really try to be grateful and show gratitude for the fact that my ancestors worked their asses off to create and invent and move forward to get us to where we are now. It may not be the best place to be, but I put in a lot less work than my ancestors did to be just as fulfilled, if not more so. It depends on who you are, but if you're doing okay, take gratitude, have gratitude for where you are and who you are, because nobody else will do it for you. We're all here together trying to figure this shit out, and at a point you realize that some of the answers never come. It's just, you realize you never really had a question. It's not about where am I going, or how do I get rich, or how can I be happy all the time, but how can I lead a constructive, satisfying life where I feel like I'm contributing and that I'm enjoying myself, where I'm working but not working for life, not living to work but working to live. And so those are my thoughts on a few of those things, and try to keep it somewhat brief. So talk to y'all later, and have a wonderful day. Make something out of it. And when you find yourself in a negative thought in your head, turn it around. Just try it once. It's contagious. You might spend the rest of your life doing it. Take care.